Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about something pretty heavy,
Yeah.
pretty serious.
Yeah. Definitely sensitive.
We're going to be exploring these allegations against Neil Gaiman.
Yeah. Neil Gaiman. I mean, for folks who don't know, he's a very famous fantasy author, American Gods, Coraline.
Yeah, and that's part of what makes this so difficult, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's such a beloved figure, so it's hard to even approach this topic.
And it's such a contrast, right? Because he's this celebrated author.
Yeah.
And then to have these accusations come out, it's really jarring.
Right, and so we want to be very clear up front that we are drawing from two sources here.
Yes.
We have a recent article in the New York Magazine,
Mm-hmm.
and then also a report from the Tortoise podcast. And both of these feature accounts from different women.
Yes. And just to be clear, from the start, Gaiman has denied all of these allegations.
Right.
He says everything was completely consensual.
Right. And our goal here is not to take sides
Right.
at all. We're just going to kind of lay out all this information that's been presented and see what we can unpack.
Exactly. Yeah. Explore the accusations, hear what Gaiman has to say, and then think about, what does this tell us about power dynamics and consent?
Right. Okay. So let's start with Ishan S. Pavlovich.
Okay.
She's the first accuser mentioned in the New York Magazine article. And she alleges that Gaiman assaulted her when she was babysitting his son.
Wow. And her account is intense because she talks about these incidents that supposedly happened while she was taking care of his son.
Yeah.
Like, she claims that he made advances towards her and even, put her hand on his penis while his son was in the bed with them.
Yeah. I mean, that detail is just so disturbing. And it really makes you question the power dynamics at play, right? Because she's in this position of caregiving.
Exactly. And you see that kind of power imbalance come up in other accusations, too.
Right.
So there's another woman, Kendra Stout, who met Gaiman when she was only 18 at a book signing. And then a few years later, she alleges that he raped her, even though she repeatedly said no because she had a UTI.
Yeah, that's really heavy. And the fact that she was so much younger than him,
Right.
That adds another layer of complexity.
For sure. Because he's this famous author, she probably admired him, and that can make it even harder to say no.
Absolutely. And it's important to note that both Pavlovich and Stout actually filed police reports.
They did.
But neither case resulted in charges.
Yeah, and that's often what happens in these situations, right?
Yeah.
It becomes one person's word against another's.
Exactly. And Gaiman's representatives have directly responded to some of these claims.
Yeah.
Specifically, they deny the incident that Pavlovich describes, calling it false and deplorable.
Wow.
And regarding another woman, Caroline, who also alleges misconduct, they say that any sexual encounters with her were initiated by Caroline.
So, there are always multiple perspectives to consider here. And I think as listeners, it's our job to weigh those perspectives and think about all the nuances involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's talk more about Caroline's accusations. She was working as a caretaker and sometimes babysitter on Gaiman's property.
Okay.
And after her husband left her, she and Gaiman started a physical relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But according to the article, there's this one incident where Gaiman allegedly put her hand on his penis while his son was in bed with him.
Oh, wow.
She says she jumped out of bed and felt like something was really wrong with him.
That's really disturbing, especially with a child present. It just adds another level of,
Right.
potential exploitation there.
Exactly. And when you combine this incident with Pavlovich's allegations, it really starts to raise questions about Gaiman's behavior.
Yeah, was there a pattern here? Was he blurring boundaries?
Right, especially in these intimate settings where he's also in a caregiving role.
Yeah, that's a big red flag.
Yeah, and then there's Catherine Kendall, who alleges that Gaiman attempted to assault her on his tour bus after she clearly told him she didn't want to have sex.
And how old was she at the time?
She's 22, and Gaiman was already a very established author, so you can see how that age difference and his professional status could create a power imbalance.
Absolutely. It can make it so much harder to say no or even feel safe saying no.
It's almost like that classic Hollywood casting couch scenario.
Yeah.
Where a young actress might feel pressured to do what a powerful producer wants, even if it makes her uncomfortable.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that power dynamics exist everywhere.
Right.
Not just in Hollywood. It could be between a teacher and a student, a boss and an employee, even within families.
Absolutely. It's everywhere. And understanding those dynamics is so crucial
Yeah.
when we're talking about consent because it can be compromised so easily.
It really can. Like, someone might feel obligated to say yes, even if they don't want to.
Right. It's not enough to just avoid saying no.
Exactly. You need that clear, enthusiastic yes, where both people feel safe and empowered.
Exactly. So we've talked about these accusations, especially the ones that happened while Gaiman was in a caregiving role or where there are these power dynamics.
Right, and that brings us to another piece of this puzzle, the NDAs and the financial settlements.
Yeah, those definitely add another layer of complexity.
Yeah, for sure. So NDAs, right, those are non-disclosure agreements.
Yeah.
Basically contracts that say you can't talk about certain things.
Right. Like in this case, you can't talk about what happened with this person.
Exactly. And they're often used to keep things quiet, especially when there are these sensitive allegations.
So how do they play into what's going on with Gaiman?
Well, both Pavlovich and Caroline signed NDAs, and they got money from Gaiman.
Okay.
Pavlovich got like $9,200.
Okay.
And Caroline got a lot more, $300,000.
Wow. Yeah, that's a huge difference.
It is, and it makes you wonder if those agreements were meant to keep them from talking.
Yeah, like hush money?
Right. And using NDAs in cases like this, it's controversial.
I bet.
Some people say they protect everyone's privacy, and they help people reach a settlement without going to court.
But don't they also protect powerful people?
That's the big criticism, right?
Yeah.
They silence victims and allow abusers to just keep doing what they're doing.
It's like they get away with it.
Exactly. And it creates this imbalance of power.
Right. And it prevents us from seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. Like if someone's done this to multiple people,
Yeah.
we might never know.
It's tough because there are arguments on both sides.
Yeah, it's a real ethical dilemma.
It seems like we need more transparency.
We do, especially with public figures.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to how these allegations have affected Gaiman's career.
Okay.
Because even though he hasn't been charged with anything,
Right.
it's had a big impact.
Oh, yeah. The entertainment industry is trying to figure out what to do.
Right. They're walking on eggshells.
So, for example, season 3 of Good Omens,
Yeah.
they changed production. Gaiman's not involved anymore.
Wow.
Disney also paused production on the Graveyard Book movie. And Netflix canceled Dead Boy Detectives.
Wow. Those are some pretty big decisions.
Yeah, it seems like the studios are being cautious.
Yeah, they're probably worried about public opinion.
And about their brand.
Right. Like, what will this do to their image?
Exactly, and to their profits.
Yeah, it's all about the bottom line.
It makes you wonder if they're waiting to see what happens.
Right. Like, are they going to make any more decisions?
They're probably trying to avoid upsetting fans.
And losing money.
Exactly. But here's the interesting thing.
What's that?
Not all of Gaiman's projects have been affected.
Really?
The Sandman Season 2 is still coming out on Netflix.
Okay.
And the adaptation of Anansi Boys on Prom Video is still happening.
That's interesting. So why are some things moving forward while others are stalled?
It's hard to know for sure. It could be the timing or how much Gaiman is involved in each project.
Okay.
Or even the content of the stories themselves.
Like maybe some stories are seen as less problematic.
Right, and easier to separate from the controversy.
Yeah, it's definitely a complex situation.
It is, and the entertainment industry is being super careful.
Right, making decisions one project at a time.
Exactly. So we've talked about the power dynamics in Hollywood.
Yeah.
About NDAs, and about how these allegations have affected Gaiman's career.
Right. And it's important to remember that this goes beyond Hollywood.
It does. This is about consent and accountability everywhere.
Yeah, we're in this moment where people are more aware of these issues.
Right, and it's making us look at things differently.
It's making us face some uncomfortable truths.
Exactly, and I'm sure our listeners are feeling all sorts of things right now.
Yeah, it's a lot to process.
It is. Like, how do you reconcile loving someone's work with the possibility that they've done these harmful things?
Right. It's hard to separate the art from the artist.
It is, and it's okay to feel conflicted.
Yeah.
But we need to have these conversations.
We do, even when they're difficult.
Even when they're hard, and we need to be open to changing our minds. Yeah, it's tough, right? Because you might love Gaiman's books. Yeah. But then you hear these accusations, and it's like, wait a minute.
Right. Like, who is this guy?
Exactly. And it makes you question everything.
It does. And so as we wrap up this deep dive into the allegations against him, you know, we've heard from these women.
Right.
Who have accused him of these serious things.
Yeah, sexual assault, misconduct.
Right. And we've also heard Gaiman's denials and seen how this has all affected his career.
Yeah. It's a lot to take in.
It is. And I'm sure you're sitting there with a ton of questions.
Probably like, what do we do with this?
Yeah, how do we deal with these situations where there's no conviction in a court of law?
Right.
But these accusations are still out there.
Yeah, and how do we think about his legacy now?
Right, like, can we still enjoy his books?
Is that even possible?
Yeah, it's tough because we might admire the art, but then wrestle with the actions of the artist.
Yeah, and these are really difficult questions.
They are.
And there's no easy answer.
No, and this case shows us that we need to keep talking about this stuff.
Yeah, we can't just sweep it under the rug.
We need to be willing to face these uncomfortable truths.
Exactly, and it's not about rushing to judgment or canceling anyone.
It's about listening.
Listening to everyone.
And looking at the evidence.
Thinking critically.
Right, and also thinking about the bigger picture.
Yeah, like the power imbalances that exist.
Right, not just in Hollywood, but everywhere.
Everywhere, and the whole issue of NDAs.
Yeah, they definitely complicate things.
You do, because they make it harder to know the truth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this deep dive has definitely been thought-provoking.
Yeah, I've learned a lot.
Me too. And hopefully our listeners are feeling the same way.
I hope so.
And one of the key takeaways for me is just how important consent is.
Absolutely.
It's not just about saying no.
Right.
It's about that enthusiastic yes.
Where you feel safe and respected.
Exactly. And it's also about believing survivors.
Yeah, we need to create a space where people feel comfortable coming forward.
Right, without being afraid of what will happen.
Exactly, because that's how we start to change things.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this question.
Okay.
How can we each contribute to making the world safer?
Yeah, how can we create a world where everyone feels heard and respected?
Those are great questions to think about.
They are. And remember, this isn't just about Neil Gaiman.
Right.
This is about all of us.
Yeah, it's about looking at ourselves and our society.
And working towards real change.
So thanks for joining us on this journey.
It's been real.
It has. And until next time, keep asking questions.
Keep learning.
And keep fighting for a better world.
Absolutely.